r/AskReddit. Teachers/professors of Reddit, have you ever had a student that was clearly smarter than you? What is it like? Here's the thing. Yes, there were brilliant students who went through my class back when I was a teacher. However, by and large, they generally had no idea of how much more intelligent they were than their peers or me. I mean, they knew they were smart. But, you know how, when you know a lot about something, you realize how much you don't know? They were like that about everything, and so they were very humble about their intelligence. Now, there were quite a few students who thought they were smarter than I. Bless their hearts. I do like the face they used to make when reality would set in. I once had to substitute for the calculus teacher. I'm an English teacher who got 51% in high school math, but no one else was available, so it was me. I made it work. I wrote questions on the board, called someone up to answer them, and then said to the class, "Now, is that how you answer that question?" The trick is to do it in a suspenseful "is that your final answer?" kind of voice that could go either way. It got a little bit tougher if the class said no, but I just had to ask the class if anyone could do it correctly. I'm not proud of faking it, and pretty sure they saw through it, but some teachers do that every day. The other day, one colleague asked me what this 9-sentence paragraph thing was. My wife is a high school teacher. This is something we talk about. It happens once every 2 to 3 years that someone is clearly on a different plane than everyone else. She said that teachers discuss this with one another, and if the kid responds positively then they move heaven and earth to ensure the kid is properly challenged. In fact, earlier this year she tracked down a retired acoustic researcher in our town and got him to help mentor a senior who wanted to enter that field. The kid was honestly past what most of the staff could offer in the way of teaching, but they arranged something for him. Public teachers take a lot of shit, but if you guys only knew what they do without fanfare. There was this one girl who was in kindergarten actually, sweet girl and very bright, about 4 or 6 years old. She was surprisingly smart for a student who happened to start the school year later than the other students, but she was so personable she flourished straight away, which is unusual for children at her level. In addition to that, she was immeasurably intelligent compared to other students across the board. She had great science knowledge, biology most of all, knowing details especially with newts and reptiles. She was adept at English too, reading books at a level far beyond her grade. She had fondness for books that most people wouldn't see until university. Her maths skills blew me away. She could add and multiply large sums in her head, like profits and 13 times 379 with perfect accuracy. Unfortunately, her parents and school administration weren't really supportive, so she developed telekinesis, publicly humiliated principal, and got me to adopt her. All the time. I constantly find students that are smarter, more talented, or just have more potential than I do. I love art, but there are students at my school who I know could make a real go-ahead in various artistic industries if they wanted to, and I never could, no matter how much I would love to be able to. I have students whose math skills and love of maths leave me in awe. I have students whose ability to acquire a second language is so unconscious and easy that all I can do is wish I had their talent. Most students outstrip me at something, and there are a few that leave me in the dust in all intellectual activities. But it is not my job to be better than them. It is my job to see their abilities, realize just how far they could go, and encourage them to go there. Sometimes it's as simple as giving them that little boost of confidence they need to take another step forward. Sometimes it's encouraging them to stop worrying about what their friends and peers will think of them and follow their interests and talents. Sometimes it's putting a metaphorical boot up a metaphorical ass and making the student realize that talent, ability and intelligence only goes so far. You need drive and discipline as well. In the end though, I know that there are students who are smarter than me and will go much further than I ever did/could. It kind of makes me excited to see what they will do in the future and what will become of them. That's one of the great joys of being a teacher though. Gather around kids, I'll tell you a story how I outsmarted my 3rd grade teacher. When in 3rd grade I got an atlas as a child and I loved it. I studied it religiously. I was determined to know all the major bodies of water, all the mountain ranges, but most of all the national capitals. Keep in mind this was in 2003, so you couldn't just look up on your phone like today. In Ohio there was a map of the states painted on out playground and there was a contest to see who can name the capitals. Some kids got 10, one got 20. It was my time to shine. I decided to go west to east starting from California. I worked my way through the entire map and named all 50 states. Total score? 47. WTF. 47? That can't be right. I asked the scorekeeping teacher which ones I got wrong. Pennsylvania, Alabama, and Maryland. I told her that Pennsylvania is Harrisburg, Alabama is Montgomery, and Maryland is Annapolis. She proclaims that Philadelphia, Mobile, and Baltimore are the capitals. Angry with rage, I asked, how do you know? She just said, next please. I was beyond red. I rushed to get my atlas out of my backpack and show her the states. I knew I was right. She apologized. I said that it was okay, ABD, I made mistakes too. I then gave her a hug and rushed to handball with some friends. Good times. The following morning announcements. The principal announced the winners of the contest and I'll never forget what she said. In first place with all 50 capitals, 3rd grader, cranial lacerations. I miss my childhood. 2 years ago I had a student who was clearly better at maths than me. One day a girl needed help with a question, so she stood up, walked around me, and went to the smart guy. I didn't mind, but I pretended to be hurt, and she laughingly apologized. The next day she needed help again, so this time she approached me. I spent 5 minutes trying to figure out the question before realizing that it was beyond me. I wound up having to ask the smart guy for help. The class laughed their asses off, but at least my student got the help she needed. Please don't tell my boss. Of course. Just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean that I know everything. For instance, I'm a high school English teacher. I have one student who is extremely interested in engineering and computer programming. Today he showed me pictures of a robot he built at home, just for fun. He designed it to be able to climb up hills and all sorts of other rough terrain. I could never do a project like this. I wouldn't even know where to begin. But I encourage him every single day to pursue his passions, because just because you're not great at one subject doesn't mean that you're not brilliant at another. Physics star here. I've had a bunch of really bright students come through my classes over the years, but none that were leaps and bounds smarter than me. There have been a bunch that were definitely more driven than me, but then that's not really all that hard. By and large though, it's much more likely that the student will believe they're smarter than me or their peers. I absolutely love helping them find their place in the pecking order. You know, that one guy who has to say something about everything, brings the class off topic, brings up irrelevant personal experience, corrects the professor over minor mistakes, and then beams like he just cured cancer. It's so satisfying to finally get him to shut up. Can completely make a semester. Oh man. I taught a master's course in supply chain forecasting the semester after I finished my degree, and for the next 2 years after that, I actually had classes with some of my students one semester prior. It was so odd. Anyhow, I had one guy, Jerry. He was an MD, PhD already. He was coming back to do an MBA so he could take over running a huge local hospital, and here I was trying to teach him. He was extremely gracious and was careful not to make me look stupid in front of the class, but he easily could have taught the class much better than me. That said, I worked really hard to make sure I knew what I was talking about. I didn't want to be caught bullshitting, so I prepped 50 times harder than the full-time professors did. Teaching is definitely not for me. The only kid I've ever met that ever really blew me away was a year older than me and went to my high school. He was about 6 feet 7 inches and played basketball, but he was literally doing theoretical physics his senior year and had to be bused to college courses halfway through the day. His mom was a math professor at Carnegie Mellon University and I guess she taught him everything. He got a full scholarship to MIT, and I'm sure he's studying some crazy stuff. He destroyed our classes and honestly made everyone feel stupid when he explained something. Incredible. I've had plenty of students who think they're smarter than me. Usually they don't pay close attention in class, so they miss details or struggle with questions which aren't phrased the same way as the examples. There was one time I had a particularly bright student. He finished a task early, so I gave him some harder questions for practice while everyone else finished. He went to the coordinator and complained that I was discriminating against him because he was the only one who got extra questions. He got moved to a different class, so I've got no idea how he turned out in the end. At the end of the day though, I know what's in the exam and they don't. I'm yet to have a student 100% a course. Not a teacher, but I went to college with one of those guys. It was a small school, and we both had the same major, EE, so we had almost all the same classes. This was the old days, when teachers would post your exam scores with your student hash, and he was always the outlier from the bell curve. He knew he was way smarter than everyone else, but tried to fit in. He didn't want to go to grad school or get a PhD. Seems like the really smart ones don't. Got a job with a big company and was out of there. Yes, I'm not exactly fucking brilliant. I've had some kids who work very hard and very diligently in a quiet way and make intuitive leaps I marvel at. But most likely, that's not the kid you're talking about. You're asking whether I have kids who think they're smarter than me and take every opportunity to demonstrate that. I have had a fuck ton of those. They make shit grades, do nothing with their lives, and are convinced it's because everyone's dumber than them. I once taught ESL to a Korean second grader who named himself Taxi. I quickly learned that he was the coolest kid ever. We were reading a story about an Olympic runner who lived in Sarajevo during the war. It talked about how she ran through the streets to practice, even though there were bombs and guns all around her. Well, one of the other students asked what country Sarajevo was in. I was actually pretty proud to tell her it was in Bosnia. For a traveler, I actually suck at geography, but I knew that one. That's when Taxi informed me that the article was talking about the Bosnian War, which means that at the time Sarajevo was still part of Yugoslavia. I was dumbstruck for two reasons. First, how did a second grader in Korea know about a European war that took place before he was born? Secondly, how could I not know that? I was older than him, though not much, when it took place. Looking back, I can remember some of the news about the war, especially how my dad badmouthed Clinton through the whole thing. Later on, my boy Taxi started coming in and teaching me about random American presidents. I'm American. He knew so many details about even the obscure ones. On the one hand, it was shameful to me, but on the other I was glad to see him take such joy in learning. He was also a very sensitive boy. He was so kind and careful with the other students, especially the younger ones. Then, one day he came to class late and had obviously been crying. Apparently, some other kid was teasing him on the bus about being a know-it-all. Trust me, I know that type of kid, and Taxi wasn't it. He sure knew a lot, but he was very humble and respectful when he demonstrated his knowledge. I found out from other students' accounts that the older kid was teasing him and pushing him every time he said one word, and doing the same to others who tried to talk to him. Let me tell you, I wanted to murder that other child whom I had never met. I'll let the administrators deal with him while Taxi and I had a heart-to-heart about just being yourself and not worrying about jerks. After that he was alright. I changed schools about a year ago, but he still emails me every couple months. Every email begins, "Hi Miss Inaugural. It's me, Taxi. Do you remember me?" I will never forget him. I've taught engineering courses at MIT and had plenty of brilliant students. The first time I had to teach a class, I was almost paralyzed with fear that I'd be found out as a fraud. But students aren't really interested in measuring your intelligence as much as they are in learning from you. So given the relatively large gap in knowledge and skills between me and even the most outstanding student, we are not really in competition. All students, not just the absolute brightest, are most engaged when facing a super tough problem that is just about as hard as they can handle. So for me, the difficulty in teaching a brilliant kid is in crafting challenges that are hard enough to engage them fully. But once they are interested, it's a lot of fun to see them come up with unbelievable solutions. Now, being honest about what you know is so central to the learning process that you have to be a shining example of what it means to be an upstanding student. So when you do make mistakes or fail to recall some fact, it's imperative to own up to your shortcomings. Smart people respect you for admitting your errors, but have little patience for charlatanism. As for me, engineering school beat out my ego long ago, so spending time with people who are better than me at mental gymnastics is more of a treat than anything. One of my proudest accomplishments is having taught 2 students who have gone on to become exemplary teachers and researchers. They're far more clever than me, and it gives me great joy to think that I played a tiny part in helping them along the way. While I'm not a teacher, as a student, I would like to appreciate all of the teachers who help students reach their full potential and can help both the regular and gifted students that enter their class every day. As a delinquent child, I never really appreciated the teachers I had until I got to college, but by then I realized just how big of an impression they made on me. And now, I'm in a pilot program for future research right as I start my freshman year, all thanks to the teachers that made me realize my potential and instilled some great ideals and morals that I previously lacked, and specifically to 3 professors who use their experiences in life and not their sheer knowledge to teach me what a simple textbook could not. I know this doesn't really belong here, but I like to let teachers know that they are appreciated whenever I can, and I think all teachers should know that there are more ways to teach students than simply what they can learn from class. Yes to one who will be working with maths beyond my comprehension the rest of his life, and one who could go to Mars one day if he gives it 100%. It's my job to make sure they realize their potential by whatever means I can. So what if they're smarter than me? World needs a shitload of people that are smarter than me. I taught at a summer enrichment program for middle schoolers. I'm an anthropologist, but mentioned to the program director that I had a casual interest in math. They had a shortage of math offerings, so I agreed to teach math and nature, Fibonacci, golden ratio, fractals, etc. One 13-year-old was basically a savant, had his own legit business. He was super nerdy, knew way more than me, but was real cool about it. I felt really accomplished when he got excited about learning this one new thing. Thanks for watching UpGoat Reddit. Try like and subscribe button if it still works.